Hello guys, Jeff here from Squadron. Welcome back to our 10th chapter of the online build of the Mosquito. If you missed out on the other 9 chapters, they're still available online, or click on the link on my right here. If you don't have a Mosquito and you want to pick one up, we still carry them, or click on the link on the left. Today we're going to tackle the engine. As I mentioned in my previous chapters, I'm not going to open up the engine cowling, so there's a lot of detail on the engine. Tamiya provided a whole lot of detail and very complicated. It's a very complicated build. But since I'm not going to open up and show it, I only going to build like a basic construction of the engine because it interferes with part of the landing gear. So let's get at it. Okay, first we're going to start with the main body of the engine. I'm going to cut out several of these pieces and prepare them. Again, as I mentioned, I'm not going to build the engine completely. There's too many parts and it's too time consuming. Tamiya provides cowlings where you can either put them on or take them off. You have the option there. So, but in my case, I'm not going to bother with it. I'm just going to build part of the engine that is necessary so the landing gear can be mounted. It's basically the framework, the tubing, the suspension of the engine that I have to build. But the engine block itself, it's not really necessary. I only need to do the body and probably the crankcase. Let's start cutting. I mean, I like a kit that is really detailed. I really appreciate all the work that Tamiya has put in the Mosquito. I mean, it's a state of the art. You hardly need any outside help as far as resin or photo etch. But on the other hand, in my case, if I'm only out to really make, like just put it together for weathering purposes and some outside detail, then all this is extra work I don't want to deal with, but it is what it is. Okay, let's keep this a little bit separated. Just to save time, I'm gonna prepare everything. I'm gonna go to the sprues and select the essential parts to build the engine and part of the suspension. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna prepare everything. I'm gonna clean everything up. When I come back, it's all gonna be ready to be glued. I prepared all these parts here. They're all cleaned up. They're all sanded. They just need to be glued together. So let's start with doing this, and then in the next chapter, we'll tackle them when we'll mount them into the wings and actually into the cowling and then onto the wings. So, but for now, just finish the basic engine and you will be surprised actually with the result. Even like I mentioned, these are just the basic parts that I need for my purpose. Once assembled, it's still pretty impressive. So let's start gluing. Now when you look at the instruction sheets, or at the instruction sheet, there are a lot more parts that made it super detailed, and it's almost a crime not to glue the whole engine together or not use all the parts. But again, to my point, I don't want to go through all that hassle. At the end of the day, you won't see anything anyways. And the fit is perfect. You know, you have no gaps, you have no seam lines or anything, and the cleanup of the parts, it's so well engineered that how Tamiya did it. Even the attachment to the sprues is reduced to a minimum, so once you clip them off, there is hardly any ejection points anymore. And seam lines, I still have to come across one. All these parts I basically cleaned up within 5 minutes. It's just amazing. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward, and because there is not much cleanup, assembly or sub-assembly is going pretty fast. You just have to, and the Tamiya instructions will also indicate that there is a little bit of difference between the left and the right engine, not much, but just a tiny bit of difference. So always make sure that you mark your parts whenever you cut them loose from the sprue, that at least you make a little marker here and there so you know what is left and what is right. Detail is a lot more crisp, it's a lot more thought through, you know. Even the mounting of the pieces on the sprues, it's so refined that it doesn't hardly cost any effort to clean those up, while in the past there was a lot more flash involved. There's a lot more seams everywhere. So in this case, you basically can clip it off the sprue and glue it. It used to be in the old days, you made a master pattern of any piece, and that piece was then put on some sort of a pantograph, and that's how the tooling was made. Now these days it's all laser tooling, and you can tell, I mean, every little detail is picked up. There's practically no super detail necessary. For this project I'm using the plastic weld, and I must say for this kind of work it's just perfect. It doesn't leave glue marks for one, or at least not as much as a regular plastic cement, and also it doesn't eat into the plastic, so it dries a little faster. The only negative thing about it is that you can't play around with it, you know, because once you apply it you really have to make sure that you have your other piece ready, because it might be dry before you get the two pieces together. For this kind of job, for small detail, I prefer plastic weld over anything else because of the drying time, and there's a lot less, you make a lot less mess. As you can see, it's still a lot of detail. Just amazing how this engine is engineered. I mean, the technology for the last at least 5 years is so amazing. Now these are the firewalls for the engines, and this is where there's a little bit of difference in between the right engine and the left engine. It's like this slope over here, and the instruction sheet will indicate that. Both sub-assemblies are mounted on different pages on the instruction sheet, so it's pretty straightforward. But still, it's only a minor difference, but it makes, if you make a mistake and you mount the left one to the right one, you might end up with a little problem. We have the basic engine block. There's a couple more parts that I need to glue that I forgot to clean up. Starts to look like an engine. A little photo etch that we need to put in there. Tamiya's photo etch is very well done, very well engineered, extra thin, so a knife will suffice to cut the parts out. Lay it in there. Now I learned that when you have tiny pieces of photo etch and you have to lay it on a piece of plastic, the way to go is super glue. But super glue is always a little bit risky. But in this case, even the plastic weld will hold it in place. You just have to go around the edges and basically let the plastic weld soak in, and it will immediately adhere to the plastic. It will melt the plastic, and the photo etch basically melts into it or fuses to the part. Just a trick, or just a suggestion. I know that super glue is necessary, but it's not my personal forte. I really, if I can shy away from it, I will. But in many cases, you need super glue just to speed up the process. If you work with photo etch or resin, super glue is the only medium that technically will work. But there are some tricks to the trade. If there's not a lot of tension, there's not a lot of handling, or then you can easily put some of the photo etch in place and seal it with plastic weld. Eventually, if you spray, airbrush it, or paint even, keep the piece in place. The only thing we need to do is put the cradle together, the frame, and we're doing this by mounting the firewall of the engine. Again, Tamiya has this part really well engineered. It's hardly any work. It doesn't take any work to put this together. There you go. Now we're putting the engine in there. Well, I'm trying to do this quickly, but actually you should take your time. But for filming purposes, I try to speed it up. But it wouldn't hurt if once you put the frame together to put it away for a couple hours so the glue can dry. Okay. Just one last piece. And there you have it. As you can see, even with the basic construction, it's still impressive. Technically, the only thing you can see once it's mounted in the cradle and you close everything up is the bottom, so you can look into, and even there, it's pretty amazing detail. So I'm quite happy with it. This is a major hurdle of any construction or any build, is always, you know, the engines or the cockpit. This is where you get bogged down for a while. So as you can see, it's pretty well ready to be mounted into the cradle or into the cowling. Here is the other one. Well guys, that was it for now. As I mentioned a little before, making engines and cockpits and the chassis of a tank and suspensions and all that, those are things you have to get over with. And I postponed this building these engines for a while, but now since they're done, I'm even if not all the detail is on there, I'm quite happy with the result. So I can't wait to mount them next time into their cowlings. So, and then really the work will progress a lot better than it's been going on for right now. There's a lot of little stuff that we have to take care of, but I think we got most of it done. So now the exciting work lays ahead of it. So that's it for now, guys. This is Jeff E here, signing off.